Hello and welcome to another episode of Manga Story, and today I'm going to be talking about the anime Frieren and where you should be reading it if you want to keep going after the anime is over. I'm going to give you my overall opinions of what Frieren's about, what I enjoyed about it, and what I thought about the anime. And then we're going to have a discussion about the manga and some of the more important and cool parts that happened immediately after the anime ended. So Frieren is a surprise anime for me. Apparently everyone was watching this and I didn't even know, but I was looking for something fun to watch with the wife, and the story of Frieren is about a elf who lives practically forever and how she was on the party to kill the Demon King and really didn't appreciate the group that she was with. The party leader was Himmel. We had the drunken priest basically, and we had the dwarf, and they went off, killed the Demon King, and because she lives forever, this was nothing but a very quick note of her life, and she didn't appreciate her time with the group. She eventually decides that because she wasn't there when Himmel passed, she wants to go to the final resting place of souls, say goodbye to Himmel properly, and let him know her feelings for him. On this journey, she ends up picking up the apprentices of her former party members, such as Fern, the apprentice of the drunken priest, and Stark, the apprentice of the dwarf. And they go on this journey, which pretty much has them following the exact same path that Frieren went with the party that killed the Demon King. But now it's been so many years later, so not everyone recognizes Frieren, and some people do, and there's statues of her and some statues of Himmel, and it's a whole thing. And what it basically boils down to is a character that can truly never actually die. I'm a little unclear if she just lives an extremely long time or if she's truly immortal, but I think she just lives a very long time. And it's just showing her story after the big adventure is over. When I tell people to check out Frieren, I actually reference Lord of the Rings, because in Lord of the Rings, the elves seemingly never die. They go to this other place where they just live forever and blah, 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 blah. But I personally always found it interesting that for these elves, this is just a blink of their life. This is nothing. So whatever happened to them afterwards, what's 100 years, what's 80 years, what's 500 years later for them when it's just over? I barely remember what I did 20 years ago. I can't imagine trying to remember what I did 500 years ago. So the story picks up, and what I found to be the most interesting part about Frieren, I thought it was going to be a sad story. I thought it was going to be something I'd be crying about and be upset about and like, oh my God, everyone. No, it's just Side Quests, the TV show. That's what it boils down to. Frieren, Fern, and Stark end up in locations. Things happen. They need to do it. But what's interesting is that it's not always a big fight. It's not always some mind-controlling demon or like this town is being overrun by this weird pig god. None of that stuff. It's just Frieren shows up and wants a grimoire, and she's going to figure out a way to help the shop keep out with it. There's an entire episode which is all about finding the right spell and finding the right flower to make it blossom around a statue, and her learning that she could do this for years and it wouldn't mean anything to her life. But for her human companion, Fern, she can't spend years looking for a flower. It's just her learning how to deal with all of those around her and not just automatically coldly ignore them, which as you watch more of Frieren, you see that was her attitude when she met the hero's party. Just leave me alone. I live out here in the woods. This is what I do. And it's interesting. It's fascinating to see her take on it, then see Fern's take on it and Stark's take on it. And what makes it even more incredible is just the characters' personalities and how well they mesh and work together. The story itself just has them doing these side quests as they continue their journey going to the north so that she can eventually run into the land of the spirits and speak with Himmel, which just makes a great story. It does start to ramp up towards the back half of the anime where they have to do a mage exam so that they can pass a certain gate. They also run into certain things like some of the Demon Lord's followers are still around and they remember Frieren. But what I liked about Frieren is that the story is about a mage who is so powerful, no one can actually beat her. And I'm not going to spoil when they finally give her a real fight because it's incredible how they decide to get to that point. But it reminds me of like the Goku syndrome or the One Punch Man syndrome or something like that, where the hero is so powerful, you know they're going to win when they enter the battlefield. Yes, I know Goku gets his butt beat, but then he goes and trains, comes back, and he's automatically powerful enough. If you want to more relate, it's the One Punch Man syndrome. But instead of taking it from a jokey aspect, the overall attitude is like, no, just Frieren's that powerful and just doesn't care. So whatever. Now, once the anime ended, I was like, all right, cool. It ended off on a pretty good point where they were moving on. They left off on a good note that she's not saying goodbye to anyone in a long manner because she expects to say hello again. And the anime ended. And of course, like many of you, who did the same thing, I Googled Frieren Season 2. And I was sadly disappointed. At the time of making this video, there is no official announcement for Frieren Season 2. The show did very well. There's an expectation that there will be a Season 2, but there's two problems with that. One, the company that did Season 1 apparently is well known for only doing one season of an anime. So the expectation will be that for a Season 2, a new company will have to pick it up and do a different style or do a different anime or animation or whatever they end up doing. The second issue is that there isn't actually that much Frieren to just jump immediately into a second season, which is more of the problem. When I did research for this video, I immediately bought the Frieren mangas. The first anime ends at episode 28, and it gets to volume 7 about midway through. I think it was like page 80 to 90. Basically, the exam ends, and then we move forward, and you have about another 100 pages on the volume of what is going on. The overall Frieren manga only goes 8, 9, and 10. And if you follow the way manga works, traditionally, because sometimes they get really bad, but traditionally, there's probably about one more volume's worth of chapters at this point that isn't released yet. Because it kind of works in that manner where they'll get a full volume out and then a few months later release that volume so that by the time, so for example, by the time 11 drops, there would be enough for a 12, but 12 won't be out. And so they'll be working like that. So if we're working off of the same number, we won't be even getting consideration for a Season 2 until volume 12, 13, or 14 when there is enough for a full season. And I don't know if this is a weekly release or a monthly release or an every other week release because I'm not following the individual chapters, but you can see why it might take a while for Frieren to get to Season 2 is my point. When I looked online, the current expectation is that if they approve a Season 2, the earliest we can see it would be the end of 2025. And it would probably be a cut-off season so that they can try to spread it out. For anybody who watched Attack on Titan, you know how that works. Attack on Titan last season, part 3. I think they may have gotten to part 4. I don't know. So then, of course, the next question is it worth reading the manga? Oh, it's incredible. So I hate where they ended the show because immediately following the show, let me give you a few footnotes of what happens in volume 7. This is only 100 pages of Frieren, so don't worry. I'm giving you the cliff notes, but if anybody watched Frieren, you know that the best moments are how their interactions work with these things. But immediately following the anime, the first major footnote that happens is we discover a magic nullifying stone that is worth hundreds of gold, which is awesome because Frieren wants to just carry it around. But Fern is scared about this magic nullifying stone, which ends up having them fall into a magic nullifying cavern. And they have to fight a monster. And we learn the next lesson, which I thought was hilarious. Because first, Frieren refers to herself as an ordinary girl and then reminds Stark that she still remembers that he called her an old hag, to which Fern told him she's going to hold that grudge forever. But then the Apex Dragon shows up and Frieren's like, she either says you can't beat it or you're going to have a hard time fighting it. And Stark's like, I just want to run. And so they cut back to the Himmel's party and they have a moment where Himmel says the same thing. Like they just want to run. So the decision is the party will run together. So then instead of fighting the Apex Dragon, Frieren, Fern, and Stark are running out of the cave together happily. We have a return of Warble where we discover he's trying to poach Stark from Frieren's team. He wants him to go over to his side to fight over there for a couple of years. But Stark turns it down, and then Fern gives him a head pat, which freaks out Stark, which was another great moment. Now, if you're watching this and you didn't watch season 1 of Frieren, all of this sounds boring. But if you watch season 1 of Frieren, I hope you're smiling because these are all awesome moments. But this is where it gets a little more interesting because these were fun moments, just showing the party working together some more. But then we move into more lore. And they explain Himmel and that part and his party, they weren't the only party. There was other heroes, such as the hero of the South. And the hero of the South has the ability to see time. He can see all the way to the end of time. And it gets even deeper when you discover what happened with the hero of the South. So as we discover, there were 7 lords that worked for the Demon Lord. You know, Aura, I think was her name. The one that they fought in the show is one of those lords that survived. And while Himmel's party took out 2 of them, the hero of the South's party took out 3 of them. And then we find out that Frieren knows the hero of the South because the hero of the South tried to recruit her before Himmel. And when Frieren turned him down, part of the reason Frieren agreed to go with Himmel is the hero of the South told her she would. He could see the future and basically told her that she needs to go with him and that that will be her better adventure. So when Himmel arrived immediately afterwards, she already had it in her mind that she was supposed to go with Himmel and them, which to me adds a whole nother level to the reasoning behind Frieren going with the party. Also, it also kind of adds to why she would turn so easily. Because I know we had the fun moment where Himmel's like, come with us, and it was such a sweet moment. But it did seem a little out of character for what we supposedly knew Frieren acted like before that, for her to just decide to go do something. Now it makes a little more sense. So we have this whole story about the hero of the South. They then cut to another town that was destroyed by a demon, where we see another demon trying to pretend to be a person, which was a fun moment. And Frieren just annihilated the demon in one shot again. And then the reward for that was another trivial spell, because Frieren likes to collect those, to turn red apples into green apples. We then have another side moment just to teach you more about learning how to like enjoy the moments. They try to go to find a hot spring so they can take a bath, because there was a moment where they were trying to bathe at the spring and Stark walked in on Frieren and Fern. And it's funny because like if this was any other anime, this would be a huge fan service moment, but they were just in like their undergarments, which in Frieren is just like a full body undergarment. But like that's what he walked in on. And like I said, if this was any other anime, they'd be like half naked, like, oh, but not this one. Which is one thing I appreciate about it, because then I'm not worried about turning a page and be like, oh God, no one can see this. But that leads to them going to the hot springs, where they learn about a supposed hidden hot spring, where they go on a journey to see it. And the funny note is Frieren doesn't want to do this, but Stark is insisting on it. And they discover that this hot spring that was hidden is nothing more than a foot bath, and it gave an amazing view. And Stark wanted to go do it because he was told by his mentor to look for those little moments that you can only experience one time. And it just keeps harping on the messages we got in the anime, which obviously are the manga. I mean, the manga and the anime are going to be the same thing. But here, the last big adventure of this volume is what I loved. Stark and Fern go on a date. And it goes well, but not well at the same time. Stark is terrified, so he asks Frieren to help him pick out what the date is going to be. Stark brings Fern on the date, and I'm not going to spoil what happens in it because you need to read this. You need to see this date. But what it boils down to at the ending is they end at the end of the location. And Stark looks at Fern and he says, you don't seem to be having fun. And she goes, oh, no, actually, I'm really having a good time. But this seems weird. This doesn't seem like places you would have brought me. And that's why I'm disappointed. And then he explains that he had Frieren help him pick out the spots. And it was just like a nice moment, because Fern admits that she was happy, but also disappointed because he had to get help, which just, I think what I liked about it is it just felt like more of a realistic thing than a lot of anime. We're going on the date and everyone's happy. It just seemed like Stark not knowing what he's going to do, Frieren taking the motherly role, trying to help him out, and then Fern expecting more, which is all in character. And it was great and it was sweet. And man, I didn't think I'd be talking about Frieren like this so much, or just going gushing about how good Frieren is, but I am, because it's that good of a manga and an anime, and I highly recommend you check it out. That's it. I just wanted to talk about Frieren because I have a channel where I can do that. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time right here.